Well, I think we're living in a very important time. It's we are the challenges which we are facing globally are about threefold. There is a challenge in our connection with nature, so we have an ecological divide. There is a challenge with our society. We have a divide in our society, and there is a challenge in ourselves. So we are no longer connected with ourselves. So that are the three challenges. In the ecological sphere, we're going to see that we are using 50% more resources when the world is able to regenerate. In our social divide, we're going to see that we have about 64 billionaires in this world who have more accumulated wealth than the bottom 50% of our world population. And in our divide with ourselves, we see that we are facing currently a suicide rate and depression rate which is increasing tremendously, which means that material wealth is not really related to happiness and consciousness of ourselves. So looking at these three challenges which we are facing, how can we overcome this? The first thing is, like what Gandhi was saying, you have to be the change you want to see in this world. Start with yourself. And that means start with your self-development. Start with your personal development. And in my presentation, I followed the mythology of Robert Keegan, who has said that we are actually, from when we're born until we die, we're going through different stages of personal development. And some people go a little bit higher than other people. But it's really depending on knowing on which level you operate. Because the level you're operating from is determining your perception of the world. Which means we see the things not as they are, we see the things as we are. So our kind of self-perception gives us an opportunity and flexibility how we're going to operate in the world. And so we have to look at this personal development stage. And there are certain elements how we can do that. We can actually really go through meditation, which is a tool. We should also go into nature experience, so connect ourselves with nature and be quite often in nature. Sometimes it's good just to sit in front of a tree, a mountain, a lake, and just reflecting on what is happening. So seeing what is happening outside, but also seeing what is happening inside. Because the things what's happening inside is the things which we see outside. So once we acknowledge this, we see that we can create our future by ourselves. If we're gonna work on ourselves, the things and the emotions and the thoughts have an effect on the outside world. So, which means we can create our own future. So it's about action and not about reaction. And that is the first part of the presentation. Secondly, if you're going into the organizational structure, so companies or even societies, we're going to see that we can develop and we should develop our societies much further in different areas. It's in education area, it's in company culture area. And how can we do this? And I think we can do this if we recognize that we can learn from the future. It seems absurd that we should learn from the future, but if we understand that the past and future is a concept, if we get free of all the concepts, if we understand how limited we are in our perception, then everything out of a sudden is possible. And we all have acknowledged this. We have acknowledged that in Germany in 1989, when somebody would have asked me in January what the two states, the two countries, Eastern Germany, the communist state, and the Western Germany, would come together again, I would say probably never, or if there would be a war. And 9 months later it happened. So which means it happened out of a courage, out of a moment of possibilities where people took this opportunity and this energy and created their own future. And out of this, the two countries merged together as one again. Of course, it was a long process afterwards, to reunite the alignment and the thoughts and the education and stuff. But we're going to learn from each other. And I think in Russia also people have probably learned that as well during the last phases. The question is, how do you deal with these realities? Are you perceiving that as a reaction, as something happens to you? Or are you thinking that you can create what will happen to me and to others? And then combine that with a kind of compassion. So how can I, out of a privileged situation, if I'm in there, help others also to perceive the world in a way that they can create their own future? And based on this, if we're going deeper into our understanding of our interconnectivity, then we know that we are one at the end, and everything else is a kind of program which is running, but which we can actually change. So that's why it's so wonderful that we coming together as here at this place also, coming together from different nations and different countries and exchanging ideas, experiences and cultures so that we get an understanding from each other. At that point of time, it's about an alignment. It's about it's not about making money. It's not about shareholder value. It's not about growth per se. It's about a mutual understanding. And it's about an economy which we can create to support what we as humans and nature and everything which is on this planet wants us to do. And it's not about that we doing something to nature because we are part of nature. And that was more or less the essence of my presentation. Start with yourself, using that acknowledgement and level of development in helping others and building a movement, collective movement together to create a new society with a new understanding of how we're going to operate in the business side, how we're going to live together, and how we're going to work on our self-development, which is a continual thing. Never stops. I think Google is a large organization, or became a large organization, and it started also with an intuition or with an idea. And out of this idea, a large organization, is a very successful organization, came out of it. I think there are so many wonderful people at Google, and I'm still working with a lot of them. I still have a lot of friends in Mountain View, in Japan, in Europe, and all over the world actually, who are working for Google or Facebook or Apple or Amazon or Microsoft or all these big companies. And what I see is that a lot of them has in common that they want to change the world for a better. They really think that they can do something there, and they would like their companies, like Google for instance, to help going into this direction. And certain departments do that. The problem with our current economic system is that once you have a certain size as a company, and once you are listed in the stock exchange, so Google is listed in Wall Street in America, then the focus shifts from how can I contribute to the society into how can I get more for my shareholders. And sometimes this is overlapping. But what I recognized is the bigger you are, the less the overlap between contribution to society and shareholder value is there. At that point of time, these companies are taking more from our nature and from the society than they can give back. And that creates this third kind of divide, what I was talking about. You have few people who are benefiting from this. That are the people who are becoming very wealthy, very powerful, and you have a lot of people who've been left out. And I think currently we are facing a situation with technology which is kind of dangerous. And a lot of people like Elon Musk from Tesla are also related to this. Stephen Hawking, the scientist, said that also, that artificial intelligence combined with quantum computing could be the end of human mankind as we know it now. And that is why we created Wisdom Together, because we think that technology shouldn't dominate our destiny. I think what it's needed is a self-reflection on ourselves. Humans and nature has so much potential that we haven't discovered yet, that once we understand this, we can become much more powerful than technology is. At that moment of time, we can use technology once we need it, but we are not being used by technology. And that is where we should go to. In this sense, if you ask me would Google or other big companies support this, I would say certain people inside these organizations, yes. But the organization itself, no. Because they are going and have to serve their duties for shareholder value. And that is like a little bit of prison, I would say, which limits also their ability for flexibility, for innovation and creativity. That's what I saw and experienced. So what I experienced here in this wonderful kind of setting is that, and I really be grateful to be here, and I would like to thank the organizers to do that at this place, is that a place is very important first. So where you do a conference and bringing people together has a strong effect on the outcome of a conference. And here at the Baikal Sea, where I've been the first time, it's really a strong, energetic place. It gives us really the right foundation for exchanging ideas and creating ideas. So that is first thing which I think is wonderful, and we should think about that, energetic places, if we plan something for the future. The second thing is that what I experienced is that there is really a different understanding of certain words, and also a different thinking from different cultures. I have understood that when I was in Japan and China and in America, even in America as well, even though America and Europe are very close in terms of the language and in terms of the thinking. But I think here what I experienced is that certain words and certain way how to understand things is different than my approach was. So that was a big learning for me, and I'd be grateful that I had the opportunity to do this, which also gives me a better understanding how Russian people, what the soul of the Russian people are. And that is what was one of the reasons why I came here, also to understand that. And what I feel is that I can learn so much here in this. And I have a huge part of the culture left out while I was concentrating on more kind of Asia. I was a long time in Asia, but also in the western part, so Europe and America. But here is a part of the world which brings so much of, roots and culture into it, that this has to be acknowledged and has to be, we have to come together. And that is also my recommendation for the future. Conferences like this, where we bring different people with different understanding, different experiences, different mindset and thoughts together, who are open for learning from each other, creates a foundation for a better world and a peaceful world, which I think is very much needed for us in the future. To discuss about certain topics and how we're going to discuss these topics, it's, I think, for the future, it's good to have a kind of mutual communication of what would be interesting, how should we present it, in which form can we do this, should it be speeches, should it be a theater play, should it be a workshop experience, what kind of people do we need from which parts of the world to bring together, and how can we also, from generations, bring in younger people and combine that with older people, so that we have a kind of not only cross-culture but also cross-generation, a kind of mutual exchange of ideas and experiences. And that creates not only the intellectual knowledge, that is a side part of it. The main part is that we create a kind of understanding, a reflection that we are actually, connected to each other, and that we are really would like to work together towards a peaceful, towards a collaborative, and towards a world where everybody could live in abundance and not in scarcity. And that would be doing more of these in energetic places, conferences, doing more of this with different cultures and different aspects, get companies in, get politicians in, get artists in, get scientists in, to have an understanding from cross departments and areas and cultures and generations. And once we can bring that together, I have no doubt that this world will be wonderful for everybody.